In a small, close-knit village on the edge of the Zambezi River, the moon hung heavy in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the land. The villagers had long believed in the old stories, tales of spirits that walked the earth and secrets hidden beneath the surface of calm waters. But no one could have predicted the dark, twisting events that would unfold on this night. It all began when Nandi, the chief's only daughter, vanished without a trace. She was beloved by all, known for her beauty, wisdom, and kindness. That evening, she had been seen dancing at the village festival, her feet moving in rhythm to the beat of the talking drums. But after the festivities, she never returned home. Panic spread like wildfire the next morning. Search parties were formed, and the villagers scoured every corner of the forest and riverbanks. But there was no sign of her. As night fell again, the elders as Nandi returned to her village, she wore a smile, but her eyes held a shadow. The villagers celebrated her safe return, singing songs of victory and offering sacrifices to the ancestors, but Dumo sensed something was off. The trauma of her captivity had changed her, and she remained quiet through the festivities. He wondered if there was more to her story, something she hadn't revealed. Days passed, and life in the village slowly returned to normal, but Dumo couldn't shake the feeling that the true danger had not yet passed. He visited Nandi in her family's hut, hoping to speak with her privately. Under the light of a flickering oil lamp, Nandi finally opened up. She whispered about the horrors she had witnessed while in captivity, not just at the hands of the corrupt official, but of something darker, a group of men who called themselves the Nyoka, meaning the snakes. They were an underground organization that had been working for years to exploit the region's resources, dealing in ivory, diamonds, and other illicit goods. The poachers were merely pawns in their game. The Nyoka had powerful allies in the cities, and they would not rest until they controlled the entire region. Nandi's discovery of their activities was no accident. She had been tracking them for months before her capture, and she believed they were still watching the village. They had marked her, and now, they were waiting for the right moment to strike. Dumo knew he couldn't face the Nyoka alone, and he decided to seek advice from the one person he had avoided throughout his investigation, Makhulu, the witch doctor. Though Dumo was a man of reason, he understood that the witch doctor held influence over the villagers and may possess knowledge he did not. In the dead of night, Dumo made his way to Makhulu's secluded hut. The old man greeted him with an eerie calm, as though he had been expecting him. The hut was filled with strange herbs, charms, and the faint scent of burning sage. "You have uncovered only half of the truth, Detective," Makhulu said, his voice gravelly and slow. "The Nyoka are not just men of greed. They are connected to the ancient spirits that guard this land. They have bound themselves to dark forces, forces that cannot be defeated by ordinary means." Dumo, though skeptical, listened careful. Makhulu warned him that the Nyoka had a ritual, one that involved the silent drums they had both heard that night. The drums, he explained, were a call to the spirits of the underworld, meant to empower the Nyoka with strength beyond human capabilities. These spirits were not to be trifled with. "You must fight them, but not with violence," Makhulu continued. "You must break their connection to the spirits. Only then will they be vulnerable." Makhulu handed Dumo a small, intricately carved amulet. "This will protect you, but it will also reveal the Nyoka. Use it wisely." Armed with the amulet and Nandi's knowledge of the Nyoka, Dumo set out to uncover their hideout. He and Nandi formed a plan. She would act as bait, pretending to return to her investigations, while Dumo tracked the movements of the suspicious men she had identified. After several tense days of waiting, the trap was set. One evening, while Nandi was alone near the riverbank, several men emerged from the shadows. They spoke in hushed tones, their faces hidden beneath wide-brimmed hats, but their intent was clear. They were there to take her back to the Nyoka's base of operations. Dumo followed closely, his heart pounding in his chest as he trailed the men through the thick forest. They led Nandi to a secluded part of the jungle, deep in a valley where few dared to venture. There, hidden beneath the roots of an ancient baobab tree, was the entrance to a massive underground network, a series of tunnels that stretched far beyond the village, leading to the Nyoka's lair. As Dumo descended into the darkness, he could feel the air grow colder. The walls of the tunnels were lined with carvings, serpentine figures intertwined with symbols of power and sacrifice. It was clear that the Nyoka had been operating here for generations, their roots deeply intertwined with both the supernatural and the criminal underworld. At the heart of the underground complex was a vast chamber, lit by flickering torches. In the center of the room stood an altar, and behind it, the leader of the Nyoka, a man known only as Karabo, a figure shrouded in myth and legend. Karabo was tall and commanding, his face obscured by a mask shaped like a snake's head. He greeted Nandi with a cold smile, unaware that Dumo was watching from the shadows. The men began to chant, their voices echoing through the chamber as they prepared to perform the ritual that would bind Nandi's spirit to their cause. Nandi approached him quietly, her shadow stretching long across the sand. "You're still thinking about them, aren't you?" she asked, sitting beside him. "The Nyoka." Dumo nodded. "I can't help but wonder if it's really over. What if they weren't the only ones? What if there are others out there, waiting to strike again?" Nandi's gaze was steady, her expression thoughtful. "There will always be those who seek to exploit our land and our people," she said. "But we are not powerless. You showed us that." Dumo glanced at her, admiring her resilience. She had come through the ordeal stronger, not broken. Yet, like him, she seemed haunted by the darkness they had faced. "I don't think I'm ready to leave just yet," he admitted, surprising himself with the confession. "There's still more to uncover here. I can feel it." Nandi smiled softly. "Then stay. Together, we can protect this village and keep the darkness at bay." As the seasons changed and the village began to heal, strange things started happening once again. Crops that had been thriving suddenly wilted overnight. Livestock disappeared without a trace, and the river, once a source of life, began to run murky and dark. At first, the villagers dismissed these events as bad luck or natural cycles. But soon, whispers of a curse began to spread. Some said that the spirits were angry, that the destruction of the Nyoka had disturbed the balance of power. Others claimed to have seen figures moving in the shadows late at night. Strangers who didn't belong to Dumo, ever the skeptic, decided to investigate. He spoke with the village elders, who confirmed that they had noticed the strange occurrences as well. But what troubled him most was the disappearance of several young men from the neighboring villages. Like Nandi's abduction, there were no signs of struggle, only a growing fear that something sinister was brewing once again. With Nandi's help, Dumo began to piece together the clues. They discovered that the men who had disappeared had all been working in the mines near the village. The mines had long been a source of wealth and conflict, with outsiders frequently trying to take control of the land. But now, it seemed that someone, perhaps a new faction of the Nyoka, was using the mines for darker purposes. One night, Dumo and Nandi decided to explore the abandoned mine shafts where the men had last been seen. Armed with lanterns and a sense of determination, they ventured deep into the earth, the air growing thick with dust and the scent of damp stone. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It wasn't long before they found evidence of recent activity, fresh footprints, discarded tools, and markings on the walls similar to the symbols of the Nyoka. Dumo's heart sank as he realized that they might be dealing with a new, more dangerous enemy, one that had taken up where the Nyoka had left off. As they reached the deepest part of the mine, they stumbled upon something truly terrifying. A hidden chamber filled with human remains, arranged in a grotesque pattern around an altar. At the center of the altar was a figure Dumo recognized instantly, Karabo's mask, the same serpent-shaped head that had haunted his dreams since the night of the Nyoka's defeat. But this was not Karabo. The figure behind the mask was different, taller, more imposing, and surrounded by followers who wore similar robes. Their faces obscured in shadow. They were performing a ritual, chanting in a language Dumo didn't understand. Nandi gasped as the leader turned toward them, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "You thought you could destroy us," he said, his voice low and menacing. "But the Nyoka are eternal. We have only just begun." Dumo and Nandi barely escaped the mine with their lives. Shaken by what they had witnessed, they returned to the village to warn the elders. But this time, the threat was not just to the village, one that we cannot face alone. "Please come back," concern etched across his face. Dumo knew he had to return. The desert had given him new insights, but his people needed him. He thanked Almastan and Layla for their guidance. "I won't forget what you've taught me. The desert will always be here," Layla said with a hint of sadness. "May your path be safe." The journey back to his village was swift, as if the winds themselves urged him on. Along the way, Dumo reflected on all he had learned. He was no longer just a detective or a wanderer, he was a guardian, a protector of the balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. Arriving at the village, he found it much as he had left it. But the atmosphere was tense. Nandi met him at the entrance, relief evident in her eyes. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "There's something you need to see." She led him to the center of the village, where Makhulu and the elders were gathered around a strange object, an obelisk made of dark stone, covered in unfamiliar symbols. "It appeared overnight," Makhulu explained. "We believe it is a harbinger of something ominous." Dumo examined the obelisk, feeling a faint resonance with the eye of the sun he carried. The symbols seemed to react to its presence. "Whatever this is," Dumo said gravely, "it's connected to forces even older than the Nyoka. We must be cautious." Over the following days, unsettling events plagued the village. Shadows moved without light, whispers filled the air where no one stood, and a sense of dread settled over the people. Dumo consulted the Eye of the Sun, hoping it would provide guidance. Through it, he sensed an ancient entity stirring, a being of darkness that sought to consume the light. "Or facing an entity that feeds on fear and despair," Dumo told the council. "It thrives on the negativity we emit. How do we fight such a thing?" Nandi asked. "By uniting," Dumo replied. "By fostering hope, love, and solidarity. We must remind the people of their experiences with the younger generation." The village thrived, becoming a beacon of unity and resilience. The drums continued to play, their rhythms evolving but never losing the essence of their origins. They told stories of the past, celebrated the present, and inspired hope for the future. Dumo often reflected on his adventures, the challenges he had faced, and the lessons he had learned. He understood now that the true power wasn't in fighting against the darkness, but in nurturing the light within and among people. As the years passed, tales of Dumo and the village spread far and wide, inspiring others to stand against injustice and to cherish the bonds that connect us all. And so, under the vast African sky, where the stars danced to the silent beat of the drums, the story of Dumo, Nandi, and their village became legend, a timeless reminder that even in the darkest times, unity and hope can light the way. As Dumo journeyed onward, he felt a new calling, a subtle whisper carried on the wind, guiding him toward the vast deserts of the Sahara. The tales of the desert were ancient, filled with mysteries that even time had forgotten. Traders spoke of a hidden city, buried beneath the sands, where an artifact of immense power lay waiting for someone worthy enough to claim it. Intrigued by these stories, Dumo set his sights northward. The journey was long and arduous, the landscape shifting from lush savannas to arid plains. Along the way, he encountered nomadic tribes who shared their legends around campfires, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. They spoke of the Eye of the Sun, a relic said to grant its bearer the ability to see into the hearts of men. Dumo couldn't help but wonder if such an artifact could help him in his quest to bring justice and balance. With the Eye of the Sun, he might be able to uncover corruption before it took root, to prevent the suffering he had witnessed in the village and the city. Entering the Sahara was like stepping into another world. The vast expanse of golden sand stretched as far as the eye could see, dunes rising and falling like waves in a silent ocean. The sun was relentless, its heat pressing down on Dumo as he navigated by day and rested by night. One evening, as the temperature dropped and the stars emerged in a glittering canopy overhead, Dumo encountered a group of Tuareg nomads. They welcomed him into their camp, offering food and shelter. The leader of the tribe, an elder named Almastan, sensed that Dumo was a man of purpose. "You seek the hidden city," Almastan stated rather than asked, his eyes reflecting the wisdom of countless journeys. "Yes," Dumo replied. "I believe it holds something that can help me in my mission." Almastan nodded thoughtfully. "Many have sought the Eye of the Sun, but none have returned. The desert guards its secrets well. But perhaps, with the right guide, you may find what you are looking for." The next morning, Almastan assigned his granddaughter, Layla, to guide Dumo through the treacherous desert. Layla was a skilled navigator, her knowledge of the sands unmatched. Together, they set out, the camels moving steadily under the rising sun. As they journeyed deeper into the desert, a sandstorm began to form on the horizon, a swirling mass of wind and sand that blotted out the sky. Layla urged them to seek shelter, but there was none to be found. "You must press on," Dumo shouted over the howling wind. The storm might be a sign. Reluctantly, Layla agreed. They covered their faces and continued, the storm engulfing them in a blinding whirlwind. Just when it seemed they would be lost forever, the ground beneath them shifted, and they stumbled into a cavernous opening, a natural shelter hidden beneath the dunes. Inside, the air was cool and still. As the storm raged outside, Dumo and Layla lit a torch to explore the cavern. The walls were adorned with ancient hieroglyphs and carvings depicting gods and pharaohs long forgotten. "This must be part of the hidden," Layla whispered, awe in her voice. Venturing deeper, they came upon a grand chamber where a massive stone door stood, inscribed with symbols that neither of them could read. In the center was a pedestal, upon which rested a small, golden sun, the Eye of the Sun. But as Dumo reached out to take it, the ground trembled, and a voice echoed through the chamber. "Only those who are pure of heart may claim the eye. Prove your worth, or face the consequences." Suddenly, the chamber was filled with illusions, visions of Dumo's past, his fears, his doubts. He saw the faces of those he couldn't save, the times when he had failed. The weight of his guilt pressed down on him. Layla watched as Dumo grappled with the unseen force. "You must forgive yourself," she urged. "Accept your past to move forward." Taking a deep breath, Dumo closed his eyes and centered himself. "I acknowledge my failures," he said aloud. "But they have taught me to be better, to strive for justice. I will not be bound by regret." The oppressive weight lifted, and the chamber grew still once more. The voice spoke again. "You have passed the first trial. The second awaits." A doorway opened, leading them into another chamber where a colossal statue of a sphinx loomed over them. Its eyes glowed as it spoke, "Answer my riddle, and the eye shall be yours. Fail, and remain here forever." The sphinx intoned the riddle. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have nobody, but I come alive with the wind. What am I?" Dumo pondered the words, the seconds ticking by. Layla looked at him expectantly, trusting his wisdom. He smiled as the answer came to him. "An echo," he replied confidently. The sphinx's eyes dimmed, and it bowed its head. "You are correct. Proceed." At last, they entered the final chamber. The Eye of the Sun rested atop a simple altar, its golden surface shimmering with an inner light. Dumo approached it cautiously. "Wait," Layla cautioned. "There may be one last test." As if in response, a beam of sunlight pierced through a hole in the ceiling, illuminating the eye and casting intricate patterns on the walls. Dumo realized that the patterns formed a map, a constellation that pointed to the heart. Understood then that the true power of the eye was not in seeing into others, but in understanding oneself. With a steady hand, he lifted the eye from the altar. A warmth spread through him, and for a moment, he felt connected to everything: the sands beneath his feet, the sky above, the people he had met along his journey. He saw flashes of the past and glimpses of possible futures, but just as quickly, the visions faded, and he was left holding a simple, albeit beautiful, artifact. It seems the true test was within, Layla said softly. Dumo nodded. "And the true power is knowing that we are all connected." Emerging from the cavern, they found that the sandstorm had passed, leaving the desert calm and serene. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow across the dunes. As they made their way back to the nomad camp, Dumo felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey had taught him that while tools and artifacts could aid him, the real strength lay within his own spirit. Upon their return, Amastan greeted them with a knowing smile. "I see you have found what you were seeking." "Yes," Dumo replied. And more. As Dumo prepared to continue his journey, a messenger arrived from his home village. It was a letter from Nandi. Written in haste. "Dumo, we need you. A new threat has arisen, one that we cannot face alone. Please come back." Concern etched across his face, Dumo knew he had to return. The desert had given him new insights, but his people needed him. He thanked Amastan and Layla for their guidance. "I won't forget what you've taught me. The desert will always be here," Layla said with a hint of sadness. "May your path be safe." The journey back to his village was swift, as if the winds themselves urged him on. Along the way, Dumo reflected on all he had learned. He was no longer just a detective or a wanderer, he was a guardian, a protector of the balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. Arriving at the village, he found it much as he had left it, but the atmosphere was tense. Nandi met him at the entrance, relief evident in her eyes. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "There's something you need to see." She led him to the center of the village, where Makhulu and the elders were gathered around a strange object, an obelisk made of dark stone, covered in unfamiliar symbols. "It appeared overnight," Makhulu explained. "We believe it is a harbinger of something ominous." Dumo examined the obelisk, feeling a faint resonance with the eye of the sun he carried. The symbols seemed to react to its presence. "Whatever this is," Dumo said gravely, "it's connected to forces even older than the Nyoka. We must be cautious." Over the following days, unsettling events plagued the village. Shadows moved without light, whispers filled the air where no one stood, and a sense of dread settled over the people. Dumo consulted the eye of the sun, hoping it would provide guidance. Through it, he sensed an ancient entity stirring, a being of darkness that sought to consume the light. "We're facing an entity that feeds on fear and despair," Dumo told the council. "It thrives on the negativity we emit." "How do we fight such a thing?" Nandi asked. "By uniting," Dumo replied. "By fostering hope, love, and solidarity. We must remind the people of their strength." Dumo and Nandi organized gatherings where villagers shared stories of courage and resilience. They reignited old traditions, held festivals, and played the drums, not in silence, but in joyful harmony. As the community's spirit strengthened, the shadows began to recede. The obelisk showed signs of weakening, cracks forming along its surface, but the entity was not defeated yet. It manifested physically, taking the form of a colossal shadow looming over the village, attempting to extinguish the light they had created. In the face of this looming threat, Dumo knew they had to act swiftly. He called upon the villagers to gather at the central square, each bringing a source of light, a lantern, a torch, even candles. Standing together, they raised their lights high, illuminating the night. Dumo held up the eye of the sun, its brilliance amplifying the collective glow. The entity recoiled, its form wavering. It lashed out, but the unity of the villagers formed a protective barrier. With a final, resounding beat of the drums, the shadow let out a piercing scream and dissolved into the night. The obelisk shattered, its pieces turning to dust that was carried away by the wind as the first rays of sunlight touched the village. There was a palpable sense of relief and triumph. The people cheered, embracing one another. They had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious. Makhulu approached Dumo, his eyes shining with pride. "You have done well, my son." The ancestors rejoiced. "It wasn't just me," Dumo said, looking around at the smiling faces. "It was all of us." Nandi stepped forward, a grateful smile on her face. "You reminded us of who we are and what we can accomplish when we stand together." Epilogue. The rhythm of life with peace restored, Dumo realized that his journey had come full circle. He had left the village seeking answers and found them not in artifacts or distant lands, but within himself and his community. Deciding to stay, he took on the role of a guardian and teacher, sharing his experiences with the younger generation. The village thrived, becoming a beacon of unity and resilience. The drums continued to play, their rhythms evolving but never losing the essence of their origins. They told stories of the past, celebrated the present, and inspired hope for the future. Dumo often reflected on his adventures, the challenges he had faced, and the lessons he had learned. He understood now that the true power wasn't in fighting against the darkness, but in nurturing the light within and among people. As the years passed, tales of Dumo and the village spread far and wide, inspiring others to stand against injustice and to cherish the bonds that connect us all. And so, under the vast African sky, where the stars danced to the silent beat of the drums, the story of Dumo, Nandi, and their village became legend, a timeless reminder that even in the darkest times, unity and hope can light the way. This extended conclusion brings the epic journey to a fulfilling close, emphasizing themes of self-discovery, unity, and the enduring power of community. It reinforces the idea that true strength lies not in solitary endeavors, but in the collective spirit of people coming together. The story ends on a hopeful note, leaving a lasting impression of courage and resilience that transcends time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.